There are 5 plants that will quietly harm your hydrangea if you plant them nearby. And I want to be honest right from the start about why. Because it is not superstition, and it is not that these plants are somehow bad. It is that each of them either wants the exact opposite of what a hydrangea wants, or takes the very things a hydrangea needs to survive, or in one case actually poisons it. That is the whole idea behind this video. And once you understand it, the list makes complete sense rather than feeling like a set of arbitrary rules. A hydrangea has specific needs. It wants steady moisture. It has shallow roots sitting near the surface. Most types want some shade and protection from harsh sun, and many prefer slightly acidic soil. So the plants that hurt it are the ones that fight it on those points. The ones that drink the bed dry before the hydrangea's shallow roots can get a share. The ones that demand blazing full sun and dry alkaline soil, so that keeping them happy makes the hydrangea miserable. The ones that spread aggressively and choke out its root space. And the one whose roots release a chemical that is genuinely toxic to it. So this is not a list of plants that are ugly next to hydrangeas or clash in color. It is 5 specific neighbors that compete with, or actively damage, the plant, to the point where one or both suffer. And sometimes the hydrangea dies. Understanding the reason for each one is what matters. Because then you can look at any plant in your garden and judge for yourself whether it belongs near a hydrangea. One of these 5 is genuinely toxic, not just competitive, and it is behind the mystery of why nothing seems to grow well in a certain part of so many gardens. I will explain exactly what it does, and at the end, the honest and more useful other side. What you actually should plant with hydrangeas, the companions that share its needs and thrive alongside it. But even there, I am going to be straight with you about something most companion planting advice leaves out, which is that the hydrangea itself is often the bully in the bed, and that changes what good pairing actually looks like. So this is about matching conditions, and about not putting a plant where it will either lose to your hydrangea or drag your hydrangea down with it. But first, what does a hydrangea actually need? And what are the ways a neighbor can take it away? Because that is the key to the whole list. To see why these 5 plants cause trouble, you have to know what a hydrangea needs from the ground it grows in, because every plant on the list conflicts with one of those needs. A hydrangea wants 4 things. Steady, moisture, first and foremost, because the very name means water vessel. And these are thirsty plants that wilt fast when the soil dries out. Shallow roots define how it drinks, because a hydrangea's roots sit near the surface rather than plunging deep. So it feeds and drinks from the top layer of soil, exactly the layer that dries out first and that other shallow-rooted plants compete for. Most types want some shade, protection from harsh afternoon sun that scorches their leaves and cooks their flowers. And many prefer slightly acidic soil, which for the big leaf types is also tied to their color. Now the ways a neighbor can take those things away, because there are 3, and every plant on this list uses at least one. The first is poison. A few plants release chemicals into the soil that are genuinely toxic to other plants, suppressing or killing them. This is called allelopathy, and one plant on this list is a notorious example. The second is theft. A neighbor with a hungry, thirsty, competitive root system, especially a shallow one in the same layer, drinks the water and takes the nutrients before the hydrangea's shallow roots can get their share. An aggressive spreader does the same with space, choking the root zone. The hydrangea does not die dramatically. It just slowly starves and dries out, outcompeted underground where you cannot see it. The third is opposite needs. Some plants want the exact reverse of what a hydrangea wants: full blazing sun, dry soil, alkaline ground, and if you plant them together, you cannot possibly satisfy both. You either keep the hydrangea moist and shaded and the sun lover sulks, or you give the sun lover its hot, dry conditions and the hydrangea suffers. One of them is always losing. Poison, theft, and opposite needs. Hold those 3 in mind, because every plant coming up is guilty of one or more, and the first one is guilty of nearly all of them at once. Now, number 1, the plant that is genuinely toxic, the black walnut tree. Number 1, The black walnut tree. This is the most important one on the list, because it does not just compete with your hydrangea, it poisons it, and it is behind a mystery that puzzles gardeners everywhere. The black walnut releases a chemical called juglone. It is produced throughout the tree, in the roots, the leaves, the twigs, and the nut husks, and the roots release it directly into the surrounding soil, where it creates a zone that is toxic to a long list of plants, hydrangeas very much included. This is not folklore. Juglone is a genuine, well-documented natural herbicide, and hydrangeas are among the plants sensitive to it. It inhibits their growth, and it can kill them outright. Here is the mystery it solves. If you have ever wondered why there is a spot in a garden, often under or near a big tree, where nothing seems to grow well no matter what you do, where plants go in healthy and then yellow, stunt, and die for no obvious reason, a black walnut is very often the answer. The toxic zone extends well beyond the tree itself, out past the spread of its branches, because the roots reach far, and the fallen leaves and nut husks spread the chemical further. So the danger area is much larger than people expect, and a hydrangea planted what seems like a safe distance away can still sit inside it. A hydrangea caught in that zone shows it clearly. Yellowing leaves, stunted growth, wilting that watering does not fix, and often a slow decline to death, with no visible pest or disease to blame. It is being chemically suppressed from below. And the walnut piles on the ordinary competition too, on top of the poison. It is a large tree with a hungry, far-reaching root system that soaks up huge amounts of water and nutrients, leaving little for a shallow-rooted shrub beneath it, and its big canopy casts heavy shade and drops a constant litter of leaves and nuts. So a hydrangea near a black walnut faces poison, water theft, nutrient theft, and mess, all at once. The honest rule is simple. Keep hydrangeas well away from any black walnut, further than you would think, well beyond the branch spread. If you must plant near one, that is the one situation where you need specifically juglone-tolerant plants, and most hydrangeas are not among them. Now, number 2, the plant that wants the exact opposite conditions. Lavender. Number 2. Lavender, and the other Mediterranean herbs like rosemary that grow the same way. This one is not toxic, and it is not a thief. It simply wants the exact opposite of everything a hydrangea wants. So the two can never both be happy in the same spot. Walk through how completely their needs conflict, because it is almost point for point. Lavender is a Mediterranean plant, built for hot, dry, sun-baked hillsides. It wants full blazing sun, and a hydrangea mostly wants some shade. It wants dry soil that drains fast and even stays on the dry side, and a hydrangea wants steady, consistent moisture. And it wants alkaline soil, the sweet end of the scale, while many hydrangeas prefer slightly acidic ground. On every single axis that matters, sun, water, and soil, they want opposite things. So think about what happens if you plant them together. You cannot satisfy both. If you water the bed to keep your thirsty hydrangea happy, you give the lavender exactly the wet feed it hates, and lavender in damp soil rots and dies, because more lavender is killed by too much water than by any cold. But if you keep the soil dry and sharp for the lavender, and site the bed in the full sun it demands, your hydrangea wilts, scorches, and struggles. One of them is always suffering, and often the one that loses is whichever one you are not prioritizing. So you end up with one healthy plant and one dying one, or two mediocre plants, no matter how you manage it. There is a soil chemistry angle on top. For the color-changing big leaf types, lavender prefers alkaline conditions, so if you were amending the soil to keep it sweet for the lavender, you would be pushing a big leaf hydrangea toward pink and away from the acidic conditions it and its blue flowers prefer. The two are working against each other, underground as well as above. So the honest rule is that lavender and hydrangeas belong in different parts of the garden. Both are wonderful plants. They simply want opposite lives. Give your lavender its hot, dry, sunny spot. Give your hydrangea its moist and sheltered one, and keep them apart. Now, a quick word. Because getting the conditions right for your specific hydrangea is the whole foundation here. And it is exactly what this channel is about. Quick one, right here. Because everything in this video rests on one thing: knowing what your specific hydrangea actually needs. Its light, its water, its soil. That is what tells you which neighbors clash with it and which belong beside it. And it depends on which of the 6 types you have, because they do not all want the same conditions, and only some care about soil acidity at all. That is the whole reason this channel exists, and I put the honest version of it in one place. It is called the Hydrangea Mastery Guide. It sorts all 6 types in about 90 seconds, so you know exactly what you are growing and what conditions it wants, which is the foundation for every planting decision around it. It gives you the prune-by type calendar, so you never cut off next year's flowers by mistake. It explains the real reason the color changes, which is not the pH the way people think, whatever you were told. And it walks through the 5 myths that cost people a whole season. 29 pages, $27, an instant PDF, a 7-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the description at waltgreer.com. And it ends the way this channel always does, with the truth included. 4 of the 6 types cannot change color no matter what you pour on the soil or plant beside them. Fertilizer will never fix a hydrangea that will not bloom. And no companion, good or bad, saves a hydrangea that is in the wrong spot for its type. A guide that only tells you what to do is only half a guide. Now, back to the list. And number 3 is a beautiful shrub that fights your hydrangea on almost the same grounds as the lavender, the lilac. Number 3, the lilac. A beautiful, beloved shrub, and one that fights your hydrangea on almost the same grounds as the lavender, which is why it makes the list, despite how lovely it is. Lilacs and hydrangeas are both wonderful flowering shrubs, and it is tempting to picture them together. But their growing conditions pull in opposite directions. A lilac wants full sun, ideally 6 hours or more a day, to flower well, while most hydrangeas want protection from harsh sun and some shade. And a lilac strongly prefers alkaline soil, the sweet end of the scale, while many hydrangeas prefer slightly acidic ground. So, as with the lavender, you run into sun competition and a soil chemistry conflict at the same time. Here is how that plays out if you plant them close. On light, you cannot give both what they want because one needs sun and the other needs shelter from it. So whichever you site for, the other suffers. Either a lilac that will not bloom well in too much shade, or a hydrangea scorching in the sun the lilac demanded. On soil, it is worse than a standoff, because it is an active tug of war. If you sweeten the soil toward alkaline to keep the lilac happy, you push a big leaf hydrangea's flowers toward pink and away from the acidic conditions it prefers. And if you acidify the soil for the hydrangea, you work against the lilac. The sources are blunt about the result. Planting them together tends to mean diminished growth and flowering for both plants. Nobody wins. There is also a straightforward size and space issue, because a mature lilac is a big, vigorous shrub, and planted too close, it competes with a hydrangea for root room and light, simply by being large and demanding. So the honest rule mirrors the lavender. Both are gorgeous. Both deserve a spot, but they want opposite conditions. So give them separate homes in the garden, rather than forcing them to share a bed where one or both will disappoint you. Now, number 4. And this one is a thief and a smotherer rather than a plant with opposite needs: English ivy and the aggressive spreaders. Number 4. English ivy and aggressive spreading plants like it. This one is not about opposite needs. This is a thief and a smotherer. A plant that takes the hydrangea's space, light, and resources by sheer aggression. English ivy is the classic example. So start there. Ivy is a fast, rampant grower that spreads across the ground and climbs anything in its path. And planted near a hydrangea, it does exactly what it does to everything else. It takes over. On the ground, it forms a dense mat that competes fiercely with the hydrangea's shallow roots for water and nutrients in that top layer of soil, the very layer the hydrangea depends on. And because it climbs, it will grow up and over the hydrangea itself, its vines scrambling over the branches, smothering the blooms and blocking out the sunlight the plant needs. So it attacks from below and above at once, starving the roots and shading out the top. There is a further problem with ivy specifically, which is that it harbors pests and diseases in its dense growth, and those can spread across to your hydrangea. So beyond the competition, it becomes a reservoir of trouble sitting right against the plant. The same warning applies to other aggressive spreaders and rampant ground covers, not just ivy. Any plant that spreads by fast-running roots or runners and forms a dense colony will do the same thing, encroaching on the hydrangea, competing hard for nutrients and space, and crowding the root zone. The mint family is a notorious offender, spreading relentlessly by underground runners and choking out neighbors. So is anything described as vigorous, invasive, or good for quickly covering ground, because that vigor comes at the expense of whatever it is planted near. The honest rule here is about aggression, not conditions. Keep fast, spreading, colonizing plants away from your hydrangeas, because even if they enjoy the same light and soil, they will outcompete and overwhelm a hydrangea's shallow roots. In the case of climbers like ivy, physically bury the plant. If you love ivy or mint, give them a space where their spreading does no harm, contained or well away from your shrubs. Now, number 5. Back to a plant with opposite needs, and one that may surprise you, the sunflower. Number 5. The sunflower and full sun demanding plants like it. This one may surprise you, because sunflowers are so cheerful and harmless looking, but they combine two problems: opposite needs and a mild chemical one. Start with the needs, because they could hardly be more opposed. The clue is right there in the name. Sunflowers live for full blazing sun, and they want hot, bright, open conditions to grow tall and flower. A hydrangea mostly wants the opposite, some shade and shelter from harsh sun. So you cannot place them together and satisfy both. Site the bed in the full sun the sunflowers demand, and your hydrangea scorches and wilts beside them. Give the hydrangea the shade it wants, and the sunflowers grow weak and leggy, reaching for light they are not getting. As with the lavender and the lilac, one of them is always in the wrong place. There is a second layer with sunflowers specifically, and it is genuine. Sunflowers are mildly allelopathic, meaning they release compounds, particularly from their roots and spent seed hulls, that can inhibit the growth of some nearby plants. It is nothing like as potent as the black walnut's juglone, but it is real, and it is one more reason a sunflower is a poor immediate neighbor for a hydrangea. Between the light conflict and the mild chemical suppression, the hydrangea gets the worse end of the deal on both counts. And there is a practical size issue too, because tall sunflowers can physically overshadow a hydrangea, casting shade at the wrong angle and competing for space as they tower up. The broader lesson from this one covers any sun-worshipping plant, not just sunflowers. Anything that demands full, hot sun to thrive, many of the classic sun-border annuals and perennials, is fundamentally mismatched with a shade-preferring hydrangea, and planting them together means one of them is always compromised. So keep your dedicated sun lovers in the sunny beds, and keep your hydrangeas in the sheltered ones. That is the 5. Now the more useful half, and the honest one, because knowing what not to plant is only helpful if you also know what to plant instead. Now the useful half, what you actually should plant with hydrangeas. And here I have to be honest about something most companion planting advice leaves out, because it changes what good pairing really looks like. Start with the simple version, which follows directly from everything above. The good companions for a hydrangea are the plants that want the same conditions it does: shade or part shade, steady moisture, and soil on the richer, slightly acidic side. Plant things that share its life, and everyone thrives. The classic partners are hostas, with their bold leaves filling the shade beautifully. Ferns, astilbe with its feathery plumes that love the same moist shade, and shade-loving shrubs like azaleas, and rhododendrons that also enjoy acidic soil. These share the hydrangea's needs, so keeping them all happy is one job, not a compromise. Now, the honest complication. And it is the thing the stock advice skips. Sharing the same needs is not the whole story, because it can also mean competing for the same limited things. And the hydrangea is very often the bully in that fight. A hydrangea is a thirsty plant with a wide, shallow, greedy root system, and it will draw the moisture out of the top layer of soil faster than a smaller companion can get its share. So even a plant that genuinely belongs beside it, a hosta or a fern, can end up drought-stressed by midsummer, dried out by the hydrangea, drinking the bed dry, even though it is the perfect companion on paper, which means good companion planting with hydrangeas is not just about matching conditions. It is about matching conditions and then making sure there is enough to go around. Give the bed enough water for everyone, not just enough for one plant. Space the companions so their roots are not jammed directly against the hydrangeas. And use a good mulch to hold moisture in the soil for all of them. Do that, and the shade and moisture lovers thrive alongside it. Skip it, and you can watch even the right plants slowly lose to your hydrangea's thirst. So the honest rule for good pairing is two-part. Pick plants that share the hydrangea's love of shade, moisture, and slightly acidic soil, and then water and space the bed generously enough that the hydrangea's greed does not starve them. Let me pull the whole thing together. Before we finish, send this to one person you know who is planning a bed around their hydrangeas. Just the link. It could save them from putting the wrong plant in the wrong spot and slowly losing one or both, which is exactly the kind of mistake you only discover a year later. Here is the whole thing in one idea. The plants to keep away from a hydrangea are the ones that fight it, either by wanting the opposite of what it wants, or by taking what it needs, or, in one case, by poisoning it. Match conditions, or one plant always loses. So the 5. The black walnut, because it releases juglone, a chemical genuinely toxic to hydrangeas, and it is behind the mystery of why nothing grows in certain spots, so keep hydrangeas well beyond its reach. Lavender and the Mediterranean herbs, because they want full sun, dry soil, and alkaline ground, the exact opposite of a hydrangea on every count. The lilac, for almost the same reasons. Sun and alkaline soil, so the two work against each other above ground and below. English ivy and the aggressive spreaders like mint, because they steal the water, nutrients, and space a shallow-rooted hydrangea needs, and climbers like ivy will smother the plant outright. And sunflowers and other sun worshippers, which demand blazing sun a hydrangea cannot share, with a mild dose of chemical suppression on top. Then the honest other half. Plant the companions that share its needs, hostas, ferns, astilbe, azaleas, the shade and moisture lovers. But remember that a hydrangea is a thirsty bully with greedy, shallow roots. So even the right companions need you to water generously. Space them off the hydrangea's roots, and mulch well, or the hydrangea will drink the bed dry and starve them out. Get that right, and you build a bed where everything shares the same conditions, and there is enough to go around, and the whole planting thrives instead of quietly competing itself to death. Subscribe and hit the bell and stick around. We do this the honest way here in the Forgotten Knowledge Library, which means telling you not just what not to plant, but the real reason why, and the part about your hydrangea being the bully that most advice leaves out. It is free, and it always will be. And drop a comment telling me what you have got growing next to your hydrangeas right now, because I suspect a few of you just realized why one of your plants has been struggling, and I am happy to help you work out what to move. Next time, another case where the problem in your garden is not the plant you are blaming, but the one right next to it. I will see you in the next one.